Hello, everybody. We are just waiting for people to join our session. We are starting shortly. I think the room is starting to fill up now. We have quite a number of participants. We have over 50 participants already. So I'm going to start the introduction. My name is Judith Hitchman, and I'm one of the joint coordinators of RIPES Intercontinental. And this webinar is brought to you by RIPES Intercontinental, but also, very importantly, by the United Nations Interagency Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy. It is an official side event in the context of the high-level political forum. And the theme of the side event is on building back better and how the social and solidarity economy can help us to do this. I think that between the different elements that have occurred over recent months, in particular, the International Labour Organization's conference on social and solidarity economy and decent work, as well as the recognition given already by the United Nations Secretary General of the importance, I think that we need to open a new chapter with a new relevance and importance for social and today's context of multiple crises is a very highly important and relevant aspect. So I don't know if our first speaker has arrived. Waiting for her. I would like to hand the floor first to Valentina, who is responsible for work, or a lot of the work behind the scenes on the ILO conference. And she has spent several years advancing the task force work as a platform for sharing information, creating synergies among the recent groundbreaking work of the ILC on social and solidarity economy and decent work, and also specifically on the ILC resolution and conclusions, please.
Thank you, Judith, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be here with you today and to speak about the resolution and conclusions of the general discussion on decent work and the social and solidarity economy, which took place during the 110th International Labour Conference. I see among the panelists many of the leading persons that were part of this discussion and beyond, so I'm very glad to be in this panel. The International Labour Conference is the ILO's highest decision-making body, gathering in June every year 187 tripartite delegations of governments, workers, and employers' organizations to discuss priority issues in the world of work. This is indeed the first time in its 103 years history that the ILC discussed an item on the social and solidarity economy. This was also the first high-level debate in the United Nations system on the subject. So the committee discussion, which kicked off on the basis of the office report and 4 points of discussion, was indeed an opportunity to highlight the close alignment of the ILO constitutional mandate on advancing social justice and decent work in the social and solidarity economy, while also being an exercise to look forward by affirming the role that social and solidarity economy can play in tackling the challenges of the post-pandemic era and fostering a planet and people-centered future of work. The conclusions are conceived in the true spirit of social dialogue and are structured in 5 main parts and an annex. I will try to walk you through it very briefly. So the first part sets the scene and recalls the links between the social and solidarity economy and the ILO by directly referencing the ILO Constitution, including the Declaration of Philadelphia, also relevant international labor standards and declaration, which acknowledge the contribution of the social and solidarity economy in the promotion of decent work and sustainable development. So based on this general setting, the part 2 provides a definition of the social and solidarity economy based on a set of values and principles. This is the first tripartite definition on the social and solidarity economy agreed upon at the international level. It was not an easy task for the committee, but it managed to come up with a comprehensive definition, which recognized that the social and solidarity economy encompasses enterprises, organizations, and other entities that are engaged in economic, social, and environmental activities to serve the collective and general interest. While locally rooted and diverse, it was also recognized that the social and solidarity economy entities put in practice common values which are intrinsic to their functioning and consistent with care for people and planet, equality and fairness, interdependence, self-governance, transparency and accountability, and attainment of decent work and livelihoods. Voluntary cooperation and mutual aid, democratic and participatory governance, autonomy and independence, and the primacy of people and social purpose over capital, especially in the distribution and the use of high surpluses, profits, and assets distributed and used, were identified as a cross-cutting and driving principle in the SSE entities, which include cooperatives, associations, mutual societies, foundations, social enterprises, self-help groups, and other entities operating in accordance with the values and principles I just referred to. So based on this definition, the part 3 spells out the guiding principle to address relevant challenges and opportunities. One element that prominently emerged from the discussion included the SSE's role and potential in addressing the root causes of informality and facilitating the transition from the informal to the formal economy. It was also highlighted by the discussion the role that SSE can play to just transition and environmental sustainability, and in creating and sustaining jobs, especially in times of crisis, while also recognizing the potential of the SSE in building social inclusion, in particular as regards for women, youth, and disadvantaged groups. It was also recognized that these opportunities can be better seized by actively involving the governments and social partners. In fact, the part 4 acknowledges this role, and it tackles how the ILO constituents can play a major role in fostering the SSE's economic, social, and environmental contributions, and especially through an inclusive and equitable social dialogue. So from the one end, the constituents have the obligation to respect, promote, and realize the fundamental principles and rights at work, including in all kinds and types of SSE entities. At the same time, the governments, workers, and employers' organizations are encouraged to establish a conducive environment consistent with the nature and diversity of the SSE to promote decent work and harness the fullest potential of SSE entities. And then the last part, the part 5, provides recommendation and key principle for the ILO office action for us. So the conclusion affirms that the importance of keep building on the previous work of the office, and at the same time recommend to reinforce and expand it with relevant partners, especially in the area of provision of legal and policy advice, knowledge generation, training and education, capacity building, and development cooperation. So the ILO office has now the mandate to promote a greater coherence across the multilateral system, including through platforms such as the United Nations Task Force on the Social and Solidarity Economy, especially with the expertise on promotion of decent work and social and solidarity economy. The conclusions are then completed by an annex which provides a non-exhaustive list of relevant instruments of the International Labour Organization and the United Nations. So for concluding, as office, we think that the conclusions provide sufficient guidance to the constituents in the office on the promotion of decent work in and through the SSE for years to come. They are also being turned into an office-wide strategy and action plan for consideration by the next governing body of the ILO that will meet in October, November this year. In shaping and implementing it, the implementation is very key in each strategy and action. We will keep engaging with ILO constituents as well as SSE entities and umbrella organizations. And then we very much look forward to advancing the SSE in the service of decent work and sustainable development altogether. I thank you, Judith, and give you the floor back.
Thank you very much indeed, Valentina. That was a really exciting introduction to all of our work. What I retain is the importance of social justice, of the role of SSE in tackling all the different challenges that we are facing today, and also the range of different structures that are involved around the world. And the fact that SSE attacks the root causes of poverty and hunger and inequality as well. And the fact that the ILO has now got a very strong mandate to move forward with all of this to ensure that there is real policy implementation. Chantaline Carpentier, you are a member of UNCTAD and the vice chair of the United Nations, designated as the deputy chair of the task force after many years of involvement. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the history and the progress that has been made since the task force was created in 2013, 2014.
Thank you so much, Judith, and I apologize for a technical problem this morning. I seem to be able to connect to my phone, not the computer. So let me start with the current context. As we are aware, the COVID pandemic, climate change, and the conflict in Ukraine have all exposed deep flaws in our global economic system. Sharp inequalities, vulnerabilities, and environmental costs have caused many to be left behind. The world was already off track to achieve the SDGs before the pandemic, but these compounding crises are threatening to transform what were gaps into abysses that seems impossible to fill, especially with the current economic system. With these systemic flaws, our goal today cannot be to simply rebuild the same system or to revert to the same business as usual policies and economic model of before. Instead, for a resilient, inclusive, and sustainable recovery, we need to look for alternative economic model that can deliver better results for people and planet. The UN Network of Economists has been working on new economics for sustainable development since 2019. We have developed green, blue, purple, orange, yellow, circular, frugal, and social solidarity economy brief as building block for a new economic for sustainable development. This has also implied looking closely to enterprise and organization model, which put people rather than profit at the center of their operation. based on cooperation, mutualism, and solidarity to deliver socioeconomic and environmental objectives. Which brings me, Judith, to the Social Solidarity Economy Task Team. The SSE described economic activity that prioritize social and often environmental objective over profit motives, as everybody on this call knows. Often these activities involve citizens such as producers, entrepreneurs, workers, consumers, acting collectively and in solidarity, exactly the type of thing that we need to rebuild better. For example, because of their social goals, value, and local roots, SSE enterprises are often natural agents to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. SSE is also transformative by bringing people-centered and planet-sensitive, and contributing to economic growth as well as decent work. SSE improve inclusion and reduce inequality by giving a stake to a broader group of actors, such as local communities, farmers, health workers, that can contribute not only to local economic development, but also to better governance and policy making. Often, as I mentioned, SSE is a localizing agent because most SSE enterprises operate at the community level. They try to fill a gap that is left by the state and other actors. They help to strengthen local communities and connect them to national and international supply chains. Lastly, SSE is cross-cutting. It operates in all sectors. It empowers individuals and communities and help to achieve many SDG goals and target at the same time. And there's a position paper that we're finalizing now that shows SDG by SDG, all this happened. So coming back to the Interagency Task Force. The task force, as many of you know, was funded in 2013 with the aim of raising the visibility of SSE within the UN system and beyond, with the aim to create partnership with actors and movement of the SSE in order to accelerate this localizing and achievement of the SDGs. The UN task force includes 18 UN agencies and the Oecds as members, as well as a number of active umbrella organizations as observers who play an important role at the international and regional level, such as RIPES, who we thank for organizing this event, International Cooperative Alliance, Social Economy Europe, GSEF, the European Economic and Social Committee, the SSE International Forum, and many others. We have seen a growing interest for SSE since its inception. So in terms of activities, at the third technical symposium last December, we agreed on an action plan for this biennium with 3 main priority areas and several objectives to advance through common work in our interagency agenda. The first focus area we identified is around mainstreaming and enhancing the SSE international dimension and profile. Indeed, it's very well known at the local and at community level, but less at the international level. We are observing a momentum and want to help advance that. My colleague Valentina just mentioned the ILO resolution, which is a major step in the right direction because now we have an international definition. And we will hear shortly from the OECD recommendation on SSE and social innovation. In addition, some governments are leading the progress around a resolution on SSE to be tabled at the General Assembly, perhaps this or next year. In addition, many governments, including, these are led by the French and the Spanish government that are rallying other groups from all regions of the world. And one of the reasons this resolution is important is because, first of all, we all operate in terms of one single definition, but we also can socialize the value of social solidarity economy over some of the other alternatives that I mentioned are not delivering on the SDGs right now. And the SSE has been able to promote synergies and now we need to be able to share this information and accelerate knowledge amongst member states. The second priority is to boosting the creation and sharing of knowledge on SSE and SDGs. I mentioned that we are coming out with this position papers that many of you have contributed to, but we also, thanks to the Republic of Korea and the Luxembourg's seed money, created the Ssc Knowledge Hub for SDGs, which is an online multi-language repository of papers and information on SSEs that document its role as promoting the SDGs. And it is also a repository of SSE Encyclopedia, which is now available. Then the third priority area is developing strategic areas of intervention on SSE. In particular, we think that it is crucial to develop operational programs aiming at reinforcing the SSE regulatory framework and ecosystem at national level, which is crucial because there are many constraints now in the legislation of countries to move forward and for enterprises to register. As the task force, we prepare a project proposal on SSE for SDGs, which intend to pilot this one UN approach in selected countries. Moreover, thanks to the leadership of RIPES and on regional UN commissions such as CEPAL and ESCAP, we are now starting to explore and strengthen regional dimension of the task force. As the task force, we stand ready to keep engaging in international arena. We think that the importance of cooperation, including, and I would say solidarity at this point of the crisis in the world, and including the SSE actors in the ecosystem is fundamental to fulfill the promise of the 2030 agenda for inclusive and sustainable development and for a recovery that do not leave anyone behind. Thank you, Judith, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Chantaline. What I hear in what you've been saying is the confirmation that the SDGs are very much off track, partly due to COVID, partly due to the war in Ukraine, and I would also add the worsening climate crisis. The SSE has very clearly laid out the fact that people have primacy over profit and that human rights are essentially, it is a human-centered, focused, environmental, people and planet focused manifestation. I would really emphasize the human rights aspect myself, that it is localizing the economy at a time when the supply chains are breaking down, that it is cross-cutting, and also the ILC and other recent publications have been raising the profile considerably, as well as the excellent encyclopedia that has been put together by Unrest. So from there, I would now like to turn to Tony Moore. Tony, you're a member of Parliament and also General Secretary of the Barbados Workers' Union. At the ILC, you carried the heavy responsibility of being the workers' co-chair. How do you see the importance of SSE from the workers' perspective? And what is the role that workers' organizations can play in promoting SSE and decent work? Over to you.
Thank you, Judith, and good morning to everybody. You referred to it as a heavy responsibility, but it was actually an exciting time because from the workers' benches, we had waited so long for an item like this to be included in the agenda of the ILC. As the first speaker, Valentina, indicated, it was 103 years, and workers' organizations share a very important synergy with the social and solidarity economy based on our historical roots, which are very much based on the promotion of democracy and social justice in the economy and on labor and human rights. So it was very exciting for me to be given the opportunity to lead the workers' benches in a discussion on the SSE that focused on a part of the economy, a very important part of the economy that is not just about the economics of the economy, but recognizes the social and environmental dimensions as cross-cutting issues. And as we have heard already this morning, that puts people at the center. So from a very important workers' perspective, we see not only the historical basis, but we see that the whole notion of the SSE being involved in social justice is what made us very, very committed to this exercise, because we see ourselves as being very intricately linked to the SSE. As it relates to the affirming the objective of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the SSE is properly placed and very critical to achieving the SDGs, which we heard are off track because of the aim of the SSE to balance economic, social, and environmental dimensions of the world of work and contribute to a better future of work for people, planet, prosperity, peace, cooperation, solidarity, and so on. The SSE is about reducing inequalities. And I am therefore suggesting that there's a convergence of the SSE's role and importance, both from a worker's perspective and from the perspective of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, which will bring together social justice, decent work, productive employment, improved living standards, the whole lot of it. Before I get into more of the SDGs, I want to thank Valentina for really setting the context for the document that was just, and the set of conclusions that we just agreed just about a month ago, almost a month ago now. And it was very important for us to be able to get included in a definition of the SSE, recognizing that it was the first definition of the SSE, formal definition, that we would highlight that it is based on the principles of voluntary cooperation and so on. It was important to distinguish between the SSE and regular enterprise, regular economic enterprise, and to stress the primacy of people and social purpose over capital in the distribution and use of surpluses and or profits, however you term them in your various countries, and that they put into practice a set of values-based, which are intrinsic to their functioning and consistent with care on people. So in this definition, we were very committed to ensuring that the SSE was able to shed light on what many often do not see, what is commonly referred in some documents as the blind spots in strategies to address the structural determinants of inequality and unsustainable development and unequal power relations within countries and between countries. The SSE focuses heavily on active citizenship and participation. And this is where I now bring in the SDGs, because while the effective scaling up of SSEs would significantly contribute to the implementation of all SDGs, what is critical to achieving that and central to achieving that would be found at SDG 17, where we speak about strengthening the means of implementation and revitalizing the global partnership for sustainable development. What this is saying is that if we are going to achieve the SDGs, and if we are accepting that the SSE is important and critical to achieving the SDGs, then SDG 17, the formation of partnerships with SSE would be very, very critical. And that is why the recent conclusions concerning decent work and the SSE identify the need for the ILO to maintain, intensify, and broaden SSE-related partnerships, and to promote these partnerships between SSE networks and with the most representative employers and workers organizations. So the ILO is saying there is a role for partnership with the states and constituents to have to get on board if we are going to make the potential that the SSEs have for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals a reality. So I just want to touch briefly on some of the key areas that SSEs will help in. As I said, they are critical for the achievement of all SDGs, but I want to highlight, for instance, Goal 2, Sustainable Development Goal 2, the goal on hunger, food security, and nutrition, and to show that much of the SSE work SSE's work, focuses on agriculture and food provisioning. And this therefore will be critical to addressing the goal on hunger. Then we have goals associated with care and valuing domestic work and the empowerment of women, SDG Goal 5. Active participation in SSE organizations. We recognized during that 2-week discussion that while SSEs did not only involve women, they largely involve women and in a number of non-traditional areas as well. And so the active participation in SSEs by women will have an important spillover effect in terms of enfranchising women and achieving the goal of gender equality. And then the SSE is seen as being important to the fulfillment of objectives 8 and 9, which refer to employment, infrastructure, and inclusive growth. And just to speak on employment, where we see that the SSE is expanding and many people are finding work through the SSE, that is why the ILO's discussion on the SSE and decent work became so important, because it wasn't only enough for SSEs to be providing work, but there was the need to ensure that the SSE provided decent and meaningful work, because that will add to the achievement of the SSE's own functioning of balancing the economic and social dimensions of work. And therefore, the spillover effect there would be that it helps to transition from the informal economy into the formal economy, where people have rights, particularly the right for social protection and to benefit from the fundamental principles and rights that were. And we were so excited in that committee that we were discussing this at a time where occupational safety and health became another core element, another core right, became a core convention of within the system of conventions that exist. The SSE also contributes to sustainable production and consumption, as outlined at Sustainable Goals 7 and 12 and 13. And I can go on and go on, but these are just some examples to show how important the role of the SSE in transforming our society into more sustainable societies. And while the last speaker made mention of the fact that we are off track, if we accept the mandate that is presented, if all stakeholders accept the mandate that is presented through these recently concluded set of directives for the ILO, its member states and constituents and so on, I think that we can pretty much position ourselves back on track to achieving these goals, even if not by 2030, and we remain optimistic as close or as soon thereafter. I would rest there for now, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony, for your really valuable insights. My take home from that is the way in which SSE supports the democratization of our societies, as well as social justice and human rights, including structural blind spots. The formalization of much of the workforce that has been informal and excluded from social protection, as well as the occupation on the basis of partnerships. So those are really important take-homes from your speech. Now I'm going to turn to Antonella Noya. Antonella, I've known you for a long time. You're head of the OECD unit of the Social Economy and Innovation. You're a member of the task force and have worked on the SSE for many, many years. The OECD has recently also adopted the recommendation on social and solidarity economy and social innovation. So how do you see that as fitting into the picture that has been painted so far, please?
Thank you, Judith, for the invitation. Thank you to Yvonne. Thank you to RIPES for organizing this along with the other organizers. And yes, indeed, I think that the OECD recommendation, which has been adopted on the very same day of the adoption of the ILO conclusion. So some people rightly said this was an historical day, an historical moment. The OECD recommendation perfectly fit in the international major initiative and discussions that are trying ultimately to raise the awareness and understanding of social and solidarity economy and social innovation as far as the OECD recommendation is concerned, and also highlight the various contribution of the social economy to our economy and society. And just let me explain very briefly what is technically an OECD recommendation. So it is one of the 176 legal instruments adopted by the OECD. But this word is a bit misleading, in fact, because an OECD recommendation is not binding, is not mandatory, but it builds on the commitment of the OECD countries which have adopted it. And in fact, it has been adopted by all the OECD countries, so by the 38 countries, because it has been adopted by the OECD Council at ministerial level. Moreover, every other country, those who wants to join the OECD, but any country in the world, can adopt this recommendation. And for the moment being, we have already received the request from Brazil, Morocco, Romania, Croatia to adopt this recommendation. So coming in the discussion at this stage of our event, I do not need to repeat what all my colleagues have already mentioned, that is why the social economy is so important. And this also justifies the reason why the OECD has decided this moment in time to adopt this recommendation. As you might remember, the OECD has been working on social economy and social enterprises for the last 25 years. So these recommendations bring all this knowledge together, and it is also building on the work that the OECD has done with the European Commission. So the recommendation is applicable at all levels of government, so national and subnational. And one of the reasons why it is so is that social economy is important not only at national level, but given its strong local roots and formal and informal networks, of course, it is very important to build a strong local community. So what is in the recommendation? I would like you to visualize how we see a policy ecosystem for social economy. So let's try to imagine a wheel and then split the wheel in 9 building blocks. And these building blocks are the principles, the guiding elements that we identified in the recommendation. I will, as Valentina did, I will walk you through very quickly into these different building blocks. So it is about foster a social economy culture, create supportive institutional framework, design enabling legal and regulatory framework, support access to finance and funding, enable access to public and private markets, strengthen skills and business development support within the social economy, encourage impact measurement and monitoring, support the production of data, and encourage social innovation. And we at the OECD have seen this ecosystem since the very beginning as an holistic and interrelated one. So the idea is really that policymakers, when they decide to design or to improve their policy ecosystem, have to have this holistic vision. Although obviously we understand that there are, let's say, priority in different countries, which might push maybe policymaker to start focusing on one pillar, but then they will have to design it having in mind the other pillar. For instance, in this very moment, we see a lot of things moving on the side of legal framework. So each principle is built around an idea. For instance, foster and social economy cultures builds on the idea that wherever civil society thrives, the social economy develops. And you can find similar, let's say, starting block that have generated these areas. And inside each of these areas, we have identified a number of sub-principles that we offer to policymakers for them to get inspired by them. I will post later on the link to the recommendation so you can have a look. But you will have understood that we really want to tap into what we have understood over the 25 years of work, being the area which are critical for social economy development. Look at access to market, look at access to finance. And obviously, this recommendation keep an eye on what is the role of policymakers, of government to support the social economy, but expand also to try and embed the role of the different stakeholders. So the importance of networks, the importance of traditional business, how social economy and traditional business can work together. And so I have certainly not the time to go into the different areas, but I also want to insist to the two final areas that I mentioned, which were not included in the original ecosystem as the OECD had designed, which are the production of data and social innovation. In fact, the OECD started to work on social innovation at the very beginning of 2000, of the years 2000, but we didn't consider it as a whole ecosystem. And during the latest year, it is clear that supporting social economy also means trying to quantify its weight. So trying to understand a number of hard quantitative elements, and this is why we are trying to provide some guidance to policymakers. So ultimately, we hope that we are confident that this recommendation will help increase the general uptake of social economy, will help policymakers to reduce the uneven playing field between social economy organization and other business or other entities working into the economy. And this is the result, as I was mentioning before, of 20 years of work, but it is also the starting point of a new effort that the OECD will need to do. Because in 5 years, we will need to report to the Council on the implementation of this recommendation. So we will continue to work with the different countries to help them to implement the recommendation. And we are starting right now, and I'm going to a conclusion, to prepare an implementation toolkit for the recommendation. And here is where we need your help, because we are chasing good policy examples that we can use to provide policymakers with additional idea. So clearly, having more robust social economy will help social economy to deliver on many aspects, including on the SDGs. Thank you very much, Judith.
Thank you, Antonella. Just to recapitulate, different states, including Brazil, Morocco, and Croatia, are supporting your recommendations, and you are building very much on the existing work of the European Commission. There are many different building blocks, including something that you mentioned that wasn't mentioned so far, which is measuring impact, and also ensuring that there will be access to markets, to finance, and ensuring that there is an important part played by policy. So you are currently looking to identify and will continue to seek out policy that is supportive of all of these measures for implementing social and solidarity economy. Now, so far we have heard from women. I will turn now to the first speaker, who is representing a state, Arnaud Boulanger. You are deputy head of the unit of the French Treasury on social and solidarity economy and impact investing. And France has been facilitating through the Pact for Impact initiative, the creation of consensus around what we have been waiting for many years, which is the United Nations resolution on social and solidarity economy. How do you see the impacts of such a resolution in Europe and around the world? And do feel free to speak in French.
Bonjour Judith, et merci beaucoup.
Judith, and thank you so much for allowing me to speak in French. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, especially to those faces I recognize online, and I'd like to greet you all. I'd like to go back, if you will allow me, Judith, to what Pact for Impact is. France launched this project in 2019, and Pact for Impact is an alliance of all public and private stakeholders participating in social and solidarity economy, who all share the ambition of giving greater visibility to social and solidarity economy and give it greater recognition at an international level. Pact for Impact was conceived as a public-private diplomacy initiative that adds on to all of the international initiatives we have, with the view of integrating all of the dimensions of SSE and the different ways in which SSE can be supported. So it's a global alliance which aims to be a platform for dialogue and resources, but also a tool that can be used for advocacy and a vector of knowledge, as well as a source of advice for its members. Pact for Impact has a very strong ambition, and France wanted to provide it with the means to be successful. We have a permanent secretariat for the Alliance, which is currently undertaken by SOS Group, which is funded by the French Ministry for the Economy and Finance, which is the ministry I belong to. Pact for Impact is a success, and we can see this through the many entities that are following its work. It's around 700, and these structures that day in, day off contribute to its work plan. There are more than 40, and this success was recently recognized by the International Network of Social Enterprises, Catalyst 2030, which this year in June 2022 decided to award it its prize for government for the area of Europe, and gave this award to France for creating and growing this global alliance for social and solidarity economy. This award recognizes the important work that is being done by France based on 3 dimensions. First, the creation of a space to create good practices and resources. Secondly, for the creation of a network of public and private stakeholders with concrete proposals to promote social and solidarity economy, and also at present times for the creation of an alliance which gets things moving at an international level. And on this last point, I must highlight that Pact for Impact deeply engaged in the promotion of the UN resolution on social and solidarity economy by making a capacity to coordinate available and to value the important work done by other stakeholders, especially RIPES, as well as the UN Task Force for Social and Solidarity Economy. This is work that is on the verge of being completed, and Pact for Impact has 8 states that are co-sponsoring the draft resolution in the UN: Argentina, Cameroon, Spain, France, of course, Gabon, Ireland, Senegal, and Togo. There are other states that we hope will join this project in the next coming weeks. And now, with regards to France, the Ministry of Economy and Finance is extremely favorable to this initiative for UN resolution. We work closely with our colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs to push this project. And today we can say that we are all committed, all aligned, and the French team is ready to support the next stages in New York with the different countries that share the same ambitions and the same ideas. From the perspective of France, the social and solidarity economy has a huge potential to meet the global challenges that we are faced with at these times, as the previous speaker said, at a time of deep changes in our world. And France firmly believes that combining principles, values, and practices of social and solidarity economy can be a driver for social and economic progress and resilience. This conviction comes, and as you may have seen, from the appointment of a Secretary of State, attaché to our Prime Minister, Secretary of State who is in charge of social and solidarity economy, Mr. Malaysia, who will be flying the flag of SSE in the French government. And in this context, a UN resolution would clearly highlight to what extent the SSE is a modern and appropriate response to the main challenges of our times. And more importantly for us, this would help setting a frame for universal recognition of social and solidarity economy through a common definition, as was discussed and approved in the ILO last June. A UN resolution would open the way to for the adoption of UN policies and other policies in different agencies, and also would encourage member states to adopt policies in favor for ESS, and it would encourage building a favorable environment for social and solidarity economy, especially with regards to access to finance, skills, education, support for SSE enterprises, and would give social and solidarity economy a greater visibility because it is a blind spot in many countries, even if in France it represents a large chunk of employment. From our perspective, we hope this UN resolution, if it is adopted, would help to come up with national frameworks for social and solidarity economy, and would also encourage the promotion of a common understanding that would give recognition to social and solidarity economy enterprises and organizations. We can say today that stakeholders of the social and solidarity economy are confined into their national borders, and we think it's possible to open up this sector to promote adequate solutions that come from the local level, to open it up to cross-border initiatives. This could be done in the way of shared projects, cooperatives among different countries, and the work done by ILO and that the UN can do will be useful, as well as the work done by the OECD. Of course, also the work of the European Commission on SSE. The UN resolution in this sense would add on to the European project for social and solidarity economy, as well as would complement the work done by ILO and OECD. So to conclude, we firmly believe that 2022 is a key moment for the social and solidarity economy. We all see this. We need to push forward. We need to take steps as quickly as possible in the United Nations. We need everyone's support for this resolution to prosper. We need encouragement. And I think that by working together, that I hope that by 2022, we will see this draft resolution submitted to the UN. Thanks, Judith. I'll give you the floor.
I think it's really a very exciting time and an exciting moment in history that you've been outlining. Hearing from all the speakers here. And I must say that as an Irish woman, I'm particularly happy and proud that my country is supporting the UN resolution, as well as the other countries that you mentioned. We have half an hour left. We still have several speakers. I've been as indulgent as I possibly can. I will try to ask you all to really stick to your allocated time. And I would like to turn now to Spain, to Maravillas Espinzaez. Your ministry, which is the Ministry of Labor and Social Economy of the Spanish government, is very engaged in the advancement of the SSE at local, national, regional, and international level, and is one of the states that Arnaud mentioned that is supporting the proposed UN resolution. So it looks like it may be even the leading sponsor of this resolution. This is an important commitment. How do you see the importance of the UN resolution at a time when our world is struggling with so many different crises? And please do try to respect the 6 minutes that were allocated.
Muchísimas gracias, Judith.
Thank you very much, Judith. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be here in this organized event with so many people committed to the social and solidarity economy. This is a commitment that means that we are moving to a more social and sustainable economic model. And this is something that we already have a consolidated reference of, which is the SSE. Of course, the time is now. It is clear that following successive crises have led to increasing inequality problems with democracy, citizenship, the environment. So we need to take on our responsibilities and ensure that we make commitments. And since the beginning of our mandate, we have included in our priorities the social and solidarity economy, because we believe that this is a model that works. This is a model that is based on people, and it is designed for people. The values and principles of the social economy are values that are incorporated in the two recommendations that were recently adopted. These are principles that are aligned with the 2030 development agenda. So we are ensuring that we can guarantee that we have a sustainable future. In line with this, we are working to create an ecosystem that is favorable to SSE. In Spain, we have a social economy legislation law that has been in place for 20 years. And this social economy has 43,000 countries, which it represents 23% of GDP, and it has more than 25,000 direct or indirect jobs associated to it. We have a strategic plan for recovery and transforming the social economy, and so that we can move away from the private economy. This is a strategy that is being supported by the EU's Recovery Fund, and which will allow us to invest more than 800 million euros in the social and solidarity economy. So this SSE is a real agent of change for our economy. The experiences that we have seen if the entities that are in the SSE show us that they are an ally that we cannot live without. They are an ally for change, for the better, so that people are able to decide about things that are vital to their day-to-day life in a responsible and democratic way.
I think we may have lost Maravilla. So I don't know what to do to bring you back, Maravilla. Saying there that the time is now, and that the creation of supportive ecosystems for SSE is an essential element in terms of helping us to move towards achieving our goals. The next state that will take the floor is in the person of Dato Mohammed Radib bin Abdul Razak in the Ministry of Entrepreneur and Cooperatives Development in Malaysia. Could you tell us how SSE is a driving force behind social entrepreneurship in Malaysia, which is possibly quite different from other parts of the world, and how this is proving to be a game changer for you?
Thank you for the question, Judith. According to the International Labour Organizations, the social and solidarity economy refers as organizations and enterprises that are based on principles of solidarity and participations, and that produce goods and services while pursuing both economic and social. In this respect, Malaysia has launched Malaysia Social Entrepreneurship Blueprint. Recently, the blueprint defined social enterprise as an entity registered under written law in Malaysia, purpose-driven, and has financially viable business model that addresses social and environmental challenges, aiming to achieve positive impacts to its beneficiaries and to the economy. This description encompasses various organizations such as cooperatives, or enterprises, non-governmental organizations, and associations that carry the economy and social, as well as environmental objectives and values, and is aligned with the principle pushed forward by the SSE. Just like SSE, social enterprise offers several comparative advantages to address societal and economic as well as environmental challenges all over the world. Social enterprises are recognized by governments all over the world and as their allies in identifying and addressing the needs of different target groups. SSE, realizing the importance role of the social entrepreneurship in the social economic development in Malaysia, the government has developed Malaysia Social Entrepreneurship Blueprint 2030, aimed at creating an ideal social entrepreneurship ecosystem to mainstream social enterprise in the economy and to normalize its social and environmental impact. The blueprint outlined 5 strategy thrusts, 20 strategies, and 45 initiatives, which are aligned to the aspirations, strategies, and initiatives of the Shared Prosperity Visions 2030 and also 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Social enterprise will be a game changer in implementing Malaysia's development roadmap for 2021-2025 targets, namely the 12th Malaysia Plan in addressing social and economic challenges in Malaysia. Under this plan, social enterprise is identified as one of the effective vehicles and instruments in addressing issues of poverty. So the developments of 12th Malaysia Plan is guided by 3 core dimensions of SSE, namely economic empowerment, environmental sustainability, and social re-engineering. In recognizing contribution of social enterprise and to help social to raise funding to generate positive social and environmental impact, Malaysia has granted income tax exemptions up to 3 years to eligible social enterprises. Malaysia will continue supporting SSE agenda and further develop a social entrepreneurship in Malaysia. It is hoped that by 2030, a social enterprise movement will be recognized as a significant contributor in developing a prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable Malaysia. Thank you, Judith. Over to you.
Thank you so much for your intervention on the variety of different ways in which Malaysia is supporting SSE. Now, Dennison, you are here as past chair of the Asian Solidarity Economy Council. Could you give us a very brief overview of SSE in Asia in general?
Thank you very much, Judith, and also good morning to everyone, or good evening, and also to Dato. I'm also a fellow Malaysian, but here speaking in the capacity of the Asian Solidarity Economy Council, which is a intercontinental partner with REPAS and representing Asia. Asia is very large with over 48 countries and is the most populated part of the world, 4.5 billion, but extreme poverty is still high. Essec active members are in 13 countries and there are over 26 active partners. And what I thought would be helpful is to draw from the practices of localizing SDGs, using SSE framework of grassroots partners would complement the discussion so far from a policy macro perspective to really see how it impacts the grassroots and grassroots movements. I want to draw 5 key lessons from the Essec experiences on the ground, whether it is in South Asia or Southeast Asia or East Asia, from where our partners come from. Firstly, that the grassroots are very resilient in the context of COVID, in the context of building back better, which is the theme of the HLPF this time, that local communities finds ways to survive, to reorganize, to energize, and so forth. Secondly, I think France, Spain, and OECD, as well as Malaysia, is recognizing the place of alternative economic models. And therefore, there is good opportunity and best practices on the ground that are already taking place, crisscrossing and cutting across all the SDGs and impacting the very target groups using the theme of leaving no one behind. But I think it's in this context that it is also social innovation on the ground, and that needs to be better documented. It has a strong point of inclusion. Majority of our programs on the ground are women-led. Of course, having poor, indigenous, disabled people and other communities. And what was highlighted by France, Spain, even Malaysia, is the need for strong policy framework. In the next few minutes, I thought it would be helpful to highlight one or two good examples. If HLPF is focusing on SDG 4 on quality education, SFA in South India started off as addressing land issues, but as a cooperative and people's movement, they went into education, and they have over 180 primary, middle, secondary schools, and even teacher training college. But it started to address economic issues that move on to health, economic empowerment, gender, and so forth. Now, if we take the example of SDG 5 on gender, HomeNet is a very strong entity in Asia, whether it's in Pakistan, Philippines, Thailand, and HomeNet Thailand on organizing informal workers in the city of Bangkok, not only introduce good health care along with what they were selling, but led a protest because Bangkok city excluded them and eventually forced through public street demonstration and inclusion into the formal economy, and HomeNet has played a very strong advocacy role. And if we take SDG 15, forest-based communities, our grassroots partners in Nepal are very significant entities along with this. And if we take partnership, then whether it's in Malaysia, in Japan, in Indonesia, Bina Swadaya is a very dynamic example of rural banks, shops, magazines that are empowering the people at the grassroots. I think what I want to add, and I will conclude with this, Judith, is that the ground has shifted. It's for politicians and public policy at international levels, like what the UN Task Force, ILO, is to recognize this shift. And there is a tremendous movement, and let's capture that energy. Thank you very much for this opportunity to repass, and thank you, Judith, and the team.
Thank you so much, Dennison, for this very rich input. In terms of the takeaway, it's the grassroots resilience, the fact that the ground has shifted, the fact that SSE is a policy framework is essential. This still has two speakers to come. And I would like to turn now to Latin America. From Asia, we're you are the senior UN economist in Argentina, responsible for delivering as one strategy, and you're a previous member of the task force. So very briefly, how do you see SSE as a key lever for delivering on the SDGs in today's troubled world? Over to you.
Thank you, Judy. Greetings from the Argentinian winter. And thank you to RIPES for the invitation and especially for organizing this interesting session. As it has been said already, the SSE is really a potential powerful tool for achieving the SDGs, all of them, sometimes particularly prominently in the areas such as poverty, eradication, decent work, gender equality, food security, or sustainable production and consumption. Given this transversality, as you rightly pointed out, Judith, SSE represents a key platform for implementing the reform of the UN system, the so-called delivering as one. In our cooperation framework here, an implementation plan agreed with the Argentinian government, the SSE related activities lie under the economic development pillar, but obviously cut across the social and environmental pillar. However, I must say that overall, the attention towards SSE is still at embryonic stage in the work of our UN country team. So let me take this opportunity to strongly advocate, I would say, for joint UN funding to support the SSE. We are all aware that joint funding was instrumental to generate interagency cooperation and joint planning in new and priority areas where we could see UN fragmentation or the need for an SDG push, such as social protection, just transition on gender violence. From a field perspective, I can assure that a dedicated UN fund to support SSE from different and complementary angles could make a real difference right now. In this context, I would like to reiterate the importance of the conclusions of the recently adopted at the ILO conference, including the establishment of international definition. This legitimation is very, very important, not only for the ILO, but for the entire UN system, very much felt in the ground. And we are very grateful for this substantial progress, and even more so as it was achieved thanks to tripartite dialogue. It goes without saying that the key challenges for SSE highlighted in the conclusions, the need for enabling regulatory environment, better access to financial services, enhanced productivity and competences development, and so on, they are something that only a well-united and well-coordinated UN system can contribute to attain at the country level. To give you a couple of insights of what is happening here in the country, I would like to highlight a particular point that is a couple of points. One is very dear to my heart, which is related to the contribution of SSE to a just transition. And here in Argentina, under the PAGE program, we are trying to quantify the universe of green employment in the cooperative and self-employment sector. This is a key area for support and policy space, and it is expected that the national strategy for the promotion of green employment with the support of PAGE and of the whole UNCT will contribute to achieve a better training, development of professional trajectories, formalization efforts, and the improvement of labor conditions, and a special support to the famous workers' recuperated enterprises that you might have heard of. I would like also to mention another innovative aspect that I find very important related to the promotion of SSE at the very local level. In the city of Buenos Aires in December 2020, during the confinement period, the city of Buenos Aires adopted a law for the promotion of the social and solidarity economy in the city of Buenos Aires under the auspices of the local Ministry of Human Development and Habitat. And here in the UN system, we are exploring possibility of collaborating with the city authorities to accompany the implementation of the law. I would like
I'm going to have to ask you to finish very quickly now, please.
Yeah, in fact, I would like to conclude by mentioning the work of CEPAL of ECLAC here, which is now an official member of the UN Task Force on SSE, and which looks at the situation of the cooperative and SSE sector in the countries of Latin America. It's a very important study that highlights the importance of public bodies devoted to social and solidarity economy and indicates that as a promising way to promote the sector in the whole region. So I'm concluding by emphasizing the importance of the regionalization work of the UN Task Force. It is so important to strengthen the recognition of SSE, to promote knowledge and innovative ways to consolidate SSE networks at the regional level here in Latin America. So as our Secretary General calls, a socially just transition, which is more just and equitable and ensures not only environmental sustainability, but also decent work, social inclusion and poverty eradication, is instrumental to build back better and realizing the future we want. And here in our different ENCTs, we stand ready for this challenge. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you so much. And I apologize for having to rush the last speakers. The overwhelming impression that all levels of government, including local government, are essential in the mobilization. Now, we have one final speaker. Andre Luzzi, you are a member of Habitat International Coalition. You represent the urban poor in the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism of the Committee on World Food Security. You're also a Brazilian social movement leader. Now, Brazil has a long history of SSE as policy. How do you think that SSE and a UN resolution can help us to improve the logic of human rights, and especially the right to food, which is really very fundamental and which was already mentioned by Tony Moore?
Muchísimas gracias, Judith.
Thank you so much, Judith, for inviting me to this event. We believe this is a very important moment to discuss the many crises we are living, as well as the protracted crises. These crises find their root causes in historical and structural issues. So the SSE for us can play a central role in this transition to ensure food sovereignty that is based on agroecology and local food systems for production and consumption. We also believe that SSE plays an important role when framing the human rights discussion. The civil society and indigenous peoples mechanism for relations with the Committee on World Food Security at FAO, and in our social movements here in Brazil, we see a strong need to come up with a coordinated response that must ensure a basic universal income to also support communities that are engaged in agriculture that are so important in our territories. We also need to ensure public procurement programs and give technical assistance to small-scale family farmers, consumers, fisherfolk, gatherers, so that they can work together based on cooperativism and so that they can work together in a self-managed way. At the same time, we must consider the need for the UN resolution to come with financial support for these initiatives launched by civil society and workers. Member states, we call on member states to adopt national policies for social and solidarity economy, overlapping with the fight against hunger and food security and nutrition. We would like to call on all of you to participate in the popular consultations to be held by the civil society and indigenous peoples mechanism. These consultations are to know better about the impacts the pandemic and other crises have in our territories and communities, and how communities can come up with transformative measures to ensure food security and food sovereignty based on social and solidarity economy. We will be sending out an email for people to respond to a survey. We will also be holding regional consultations here in Latin America. These regional consultations will be on the 14th and 15th of July. And then in the month of September, we will be holding a webinar to bring together and consolidate all of these recommendations and practices that are being taken in our regions to guarantee the human right to adequate food. So, social solidarity economy must take center stage in this transition, and it deserves full support from member states and international organizations to be able to respond to the needs in our communities and as the subjects of rights, so that we can all participate in these policies in spaces to collectively build public policies. So to conclude, I'll say that we need to consider how important it is for communities to participate in the drafting and implementation of social and solidarity economies. This is an important legacy here in Brazil. It's a strong part of our struggle, and we need governments that are engaged in inclusive and democratic processes. Thank you so much, Judith.
And thank you so much. Just 2 minutes before our time is up, I would like to support us in all of this meeting because it hasn't been easy. I would like to thank all of the speakers for their contributions. In terms of drawing conclusions, I think that I've been summarizing as we go. SSE is human rights based. It is people-centered and planet-centered. We are moving towards a major paradigm shift. The time is now, and I hope that together we will be actors in this very important change. Do you wish to say a last word, Valentina, as the co-organizers here, and from speaking from the perspective of the International Labour Conference?
Yeah, sure, Judith. Thank you for these. And I think also Chanteline is now the deputy chair of the task force. So more than me, she's co-hosting this webinar. But from my side, is very, what is striking is the momentum that is happening at all level, international, regional, national, local level. And also, as many of the speakers, Tony and others, they mentioned the partnership. So these collective efforts, the cooperation, the values of SSE that, are really playing a role and can play a role in both advancing decent work and the SDG and Agenda 2030. So with this spirit, we hope to keep going and keep working all together.
Thank you. Chanteline, last word before we go off air.
Thank you, Judith. I just wanted, je voulais vous remercier, Ripez, et toi personnellement.
I wanted to thank Ripez
ce
and you
webinaire.
personally for
C'est très
organizing this
important
webinar.
et
It's
le timing en
extremely
français ne pourrait
important.
être mieux.
It comes at
Je suis tout à fait
an
d'accord
excellent time,
qu'on est
and
dans
I
une
agree
charnière où est-ce qu'on
that
a besoin de
we
nouvelles
need
pensées, de nouvelles approches,
new
et
approaches
l'économie
and
sociale et
new
solidaire est
ideas,
vraiment
and the
une
social and
partie de la
solidarity
solution
economy
et on compte
is
sur
a part of
tous
this
pour travailler
solution,
ensemble pour y
and we
arriver.
must all work together to make this happen. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup de ces derniers mots.
Thank you very much, Chantaline, for these last words.
70 participants, and again, a huge thanks to our interpreters.